I know there's a lot of great guys out there and you're doing an awesome job.
Yeah.
But I know there's a lot of guys that are struggling with this. And what I want to do is not shame you. I want to encourage you. And again, I'm not perfect at it. We're still growing. That's why we're doing this, to grow. Grow with us. Come on this journey with us. Welcome to Honey, We Need to Chat.
This is a podcast all about communication. What's our motto?
To communicata or not communicata?
Excuse me, Bonnie?
Come here, girl. Bonnie.
Excuse me, buddy?
He just wants Bonnie. All right, we're just wrestling with our golden retriever at the moment that is trying to push Amy off her seat.
What is happening? There's no space for you up here.
Bonnie, come on.
There's no space.
Bonnie.
All right, well, welcome.
Welcome
she slobbered on my jumper.
Oh, yeah.
Gross.
Now that's amazing.
Okay. We're all about communication here.
Mm-hmm.
We believe that when communication dies, bad things happen. So anyway, welcome. We are really excited to be here. We haven't recorded for a little while. I feel like it's been a while.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah, because I've been doing my production of Sound of Music, in which I was just a nun. Don't get excited, but it was very fun.
Just a nun? You were the nun.
One of the 28.
The nun that wasn't the main nun. That's who you were.
One of the non-main nuns.
Yeah.
I'm still doing it. I will be back tomorrow and the next 3 days, which is the last few days of the run, but very exciting. It just has meant that we've been extremely busy family-wise, so haven't recorded.
Yeah, we do have our New Zealand trip coming up, which we're really, really excited about. So if you're not already, go follow us on Instagrams, the socials, and follow along that journey with us. It'll be really, really cool. I'm actually really looking forward to that.
Yeah, it'll be awesome.
It's going to be exciting.
And not to date this episode too much, but we've had a really exciting week with the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Because our listener group has expanded drastically.
Massively.
Due to Blair being sickly sweet on a TikTok.
Yeah, but we addressed it.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
So
it
just
beautiful.
For context for those that didn't see if you weren't a part of the 2 million views on TikTok.
So far, but we don't know when this comes out.
Yeah.
I don't know how many.
There was a moment in the episode that came out where Amy was making the point of what generalized beauty is. In that moment, just in the way that she was saying it, you made the comment of, you don't even think that I see you as the most beautiful person in the world. I know that's not what you were saying, but I couldn't just let you say it. It just was really grinding inside of me. Just hearing you say that. And so I just communicated, well, actually, no, Amy is the most beautiful woman in the world to me. And I explained why, her being the mother of my children, my best friend. I really do think you're beautiful. Anyway, that blew up and I got a lot of praise over that. We came out with a follow-up video essentially just saying, man, what I did in that video is actually the bare minimum of what I should be doing to express my love for you. And even then, like, I said nice words. And this was one big point of the video, though, was that unless you feel those words, they're just words, you know? And so that's one.
Unless you feel and also act them out.
Exactly right. But it was just really, really sad. We had a lot of comments come through about how people hadn't felt that from their partners and everything else. And it's really, really sad. And so I put out a bit of a challenge for guys. And just to be clear that I haven't always treated Amy like this. Words of affirmation did not come naturally to me. It's something that we have grown in together. The more that I've known you, the more that we've been intentional about growing in me understanding who you are. So it's through the growth of our relationship have I been able to speak to you that way. It's not a natural thing. Yeah, just we wanted to make that really, really clear because we were getting some comments about, oh, where do I find a man like that? Well, you didn't find me like that. We've worked on that together.
I mean, you are, and always were, even before I met you, just very ready to learn and very ready to be a good husband and a good dad. Doesn't mean you knew everything, and neither did I.
No.
And I think that's the key is you work as a team and that team has to be a safe and healthy place for that to be fostered. But you were always a very switched on man. But I think you're someone who's willing to be intentional, though. I think that's a key factor in that. But we all are capable of being intentional.
Absolutely.
Every single person is capable of being intentional.
Absolutely.
So it's interesting, though. One comment that really stood out to me, I don't know if we've even spoken about it.
One that you screenshot last night?
Oh, no.
What was it?
He said, she's a yapper. She's a yapper. She's lucky to have him.
We've had some, like, out of the 2 million that we've seen so far, there's been like 10 that have been silly, and you've deleted a few of them.
Some of them have been just nasty. I'm like, I don't need you on here.
No.
But no, that's not the comment I was going to talk about. What I was going to talk about was a guy had commented and said the man set the bar up on the moon, and I was like, he set the bar on the moon? Yeah. Excuse me? Yeah. This is like,
again,
he hasn't lifted the bar, man. This bar is where it should be.
Yeah.
And someone saying he's set the bar to the moon. I'm sorry, is it really that unreasonable to think about saying something like that to your partner? I think that is just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
So it's been very educational this week, but also super encouraging in terms of the podcast and the engagement. So thank you for being here, and thank you for liking and following and all of the above. It's been amazing. Well, this is a Reddit week, Reddit story week, but excitingly, we actually have a couple of listener write-ins to talk about. So and we have to do just Reddit.
We have to do like opener questions and stuff.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Oh yeah, cool.
Just
say
given
it.
Say the context. It, girl. Yeah. But before we do that, we'll do some opening questions and stuff.
Which are also from Patreons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we got a couple from Patreon. So Patreon, guys, thank you so much for support. We've just activated Patreon. We got our first few Patreoners. We're going to come up with a fun name with that.
A better name. And if you have suggestions, let us know. Because it's not just Patreon. We've also got Spotify subscription. So just let us know. It's a bit complicated. Yeah. I don't want to call them the honeys.
The patries.
Our honeys. We could call them our honeys. Not the pat.
No, we got many names. I've got so many names.
We could call them our chatterboxers. Chatterboxes.
Anyway, so we do have some. So my opening question is, if you had all the money in the world, you didn't have to worry about anything, would you decide to live on a beach, like in a different country like Greece? Like, would you like to raise a family?
Yeah.
Right? In the mountains or in the city?
In the mountains. If I had all the money in the world.
Really?
Yeah, easy. What do you mean?
100% thought you would have said New York.
Not to raise a family. Heck no.
Oh,
Heck no. To the techno, yeah. No,
right.
Yeah, mountains easy. And
why?
Some secluded little, like, off the grid. I've spoken about this for years.
Well, now you've thrown me because I legit thought you would have said New York.
No.
It's a city.
Do you know me? I do love New York. It's my favorite city, but that's not where I want to live.
But you would always talk about how you wish you lived in New York. I know you've said stuff about the mountains, but you haven't. I don't feel like you've expressed your views of the mountains the way that you've expressed your views of the city.
I think raising a family is a totally different thing. If I was a single woman or even in a couple, then maybe living in New York would be really cool for a while. But even then, I wouldn't want to live there for my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There you go.
Cool.
Learn something new every day. You?
Me? Mountains. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just love the mountains in general.
Yeah. I mean, the beach would be nice, but it would just it's so touristy or it's so like holiday-y. I feel like the mountains, you can like.
I do love the beach. I do love the beach. But I think I just enjoy the mountains more. I think because in my head, when I think of mountains, I think of like the videos you see on Instagram and TikTok and stuff about the tree houses, like the actual legit tree houses, and it's raining and it's like waterfall coming down next to it. Give me that.
For me, it's really just about where I would be the most hidden from zombies.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's only partially a joke.
Yeah.
And you? Oh wait, no, you already.
Yeah, but I want to be away from zombies too. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, just in case it does happen, guys. No, I'm not going to tell you our plans.
Don't tell them our plans. If they become the zombie, they're going to know where we are.
And I'm not joking when I say we have planned it.
Yeah, legit. When we used to watch Walking Dead a lot, and every time we would go for a drive, we're like, oh yeah, we'll go here, and we plan out the whole thing, the whole shebang.
But if you have a plan you want to share it with us, let us know. Won't be as good as ours.
No.
What's the next question?
Nailed it. Simple one. Pineapple on pizza. Yay or nay?
Nay. What about you?
I am on the fence.
Really?
I am on the fence. I mostly nay, but I could dabble. I could dabble with some pineapple and ham.
That sound could go so many ways.
Yeah.
If I turn it into a TikTok. I like pineapple.
Yeah, I love pineapple.
I don't want it on savory stuff. I don't get that. Sweet and savory.
I don't like it on burgers, and it's a no go on burgers. And again, most of the time it's a no, but I will say that sometimes a little nibble is nice.
Again.
I'll try to think of how many times I could, in many ways I
How
could
many
say
ways
this.
you can innuendo your way through.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. So no. I'm going to say no with like a half yes from Blair.
The first question was by our Patreon, Gaz. Thank you so much,
Gaz.
mate, for your support. And the pizza one, Shane. Thank you so much, Shane.
Thanks,
really
Shane.
appreciate you, mate. And I'm just going to do another
chat jar.
We're going to do a chat jar. In what ways do you want us to grow in our communication?
It's an area of strength for us now.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably I want to grow in being more upfront with how I'm feeling with things.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is I'm not always sure how I feel until I've like worked it out a bit. So it's a bit hard to do that. And the other issue is being upfront can come across blunt or inflammatory, which I have observed in my lifetime a lot. And so that's why I tend not to do that. But I do wish I was a little bit better at saying, I think I'm getting better, but just saying what I really think.
I think you're getting a lot better at saying it. Yeah, for sure.
I get a lot better at telling what I need.
Tell me what's what.
What about you?
For me, I think the way that I would like us to communicate better, I was not ready for this question because I got it out of the jar.
Yeah.
I think this is a hard one for me to answer because we are working on stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh man, it's not like that we don't have anything to work on, but we are working on, we're already actively working on it. So it's hard to pinpoint something. This might sound funny, but I genuinely mean this. I want to get better at being able to communicate nicely in the mornings.
Yeah.
Like at the kids, at everyone. Like in the morning, I'm not a morning person at all, and I'm very cranky. And so when there's yelling and there's things aren't going forward, or if they can't find their shoes, like this morning, I get very, very cranky.
Yeah.
So when it comes to communication with us, I don't know how that fits, but I think it's something like maybe, I don't know, our communication about how supporting each other when we're cranky with the kids or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's the one I got.
Nice.
So just out of transparency, that stupid chat jar, that question just sparked up a lot of stuff for us. So we had to be real. And that was a conversation that Amy and we just had to have a break. We had to chat that out. And it was good. It's hard.
Still married.
We are still married today. No, but it's good. We had to have that break and to chat through that. That's something we're going to keep private for now. Yeah. We will cover that in another episode, I think, because I don't think that it's unique to us. I genuinely don't. Oh, I know it's not. But it's still a sensitive one. And so, yeah, we'll share with you guys in the future.
It's just more raw and unprocessed. So
yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, here we are.
So he's had to have a moment.
Shall we dive into the stories?
Yes, let's do it.
So this week's theme is kind of following along the mental load episode, the chit chat about mental load. So this theme is a similar one. It's processing some mental load, but the actual theme is going to be basically when you feel alone in something of your relationship. So feeling alone in those things. And as I mentioned earlier, we've got some exciting listener write-ins to talk through, which is the first time ever. So please, guys,
I love it.
If you have a story you want us to workshop on the podcast, please message us. You can contact us via the website at
honeyweneedtochat.com.
honeyweneedtochat.com. Or you can just email us at www.honeyweneedtochat, not www.
You don't need to say www ever. So even if they just go to Google.
I do need to say it. Just email us at honeyweneedtochat@gmail.com. Jeez Louise.
Even if they go to Google, they just type in honeyweneedtochat.com.
Yeah, okay, whatever. Just message us. And anyway, we're here. You'll find us.
Okay, we need to have another moment. Sorry, guys.
Honey, we need to chat.
We would love to workshop any stories you feel inclined to share with us because we love building this community. So excited to talk through a couple of these that have been written in from listeners. Thank you for those. But firstly, we're going to start with one story from r/relationships on Reddit. It is titled, Irrationally Angry Over Something My, 29 female, partner, 35 male, said bothers him. My partner told me last night that the state of the house lately is really bothering him. He said he can handle untidiness but draws the line at dirty. The night prior, he walked past the bathroom and one of my kids had torn up a small amount of toilet paper and evidently thrown it on the floor. He got angry, made some passive-aggressive remarks about the bathroom, stomped around the house, and then deep cleaned the bathroom. This is the first time since he moved in 2.5 years ago that he has cleaned it. I have always done a majority of the housework. For the first 2 years, I did 90%, even when I was working and studying. About 12 months ago, he stepped up unprompted, and now the split is roughly 70% me and 30% him. He will do the dishes close to half the time. He'll sweep and mop sometimes, takes the bins out, and maintains the lawns. I cook 99% of the time, and I do 99% of the laundry. I clean the bathrooms and do everything else mentioned above when he doesn't feel like doing it. I also carry 100% of the mental load and do all grocery shopping, etc. His comment last night really hit a nerve. The reasons it did, I think, is because, one, although he has stepped up, he gets to pick and choose when he helps. If he doesn't feel like doing the dishes for a week, he won't. If I didn't do the dishes for a week, he would make me feel guilty. I've never actually done this. The dishes are done every single night. 2, the house isn't dirty. We've had 3 kids' birthdays in the last 1.5 months, and it has become cluttered and disorganized, but I never leave food out or anything unhygienic. 3, when he lived alone, he bragged that he only cleaned on Thursdays. He left everything, including dirty dishes, sitting from Friday to Thursday. But now he claims he has such high cleanliness standards. 4, he spends his days off doing whatever he wants while I'm expected to spend mine cleaning. And 5, I obviously still hold resentment for doing all of it for the first 2 years. I will admit the bathroom is overdue for a deep clean. I had done it 3 weeks prior and it was untidy, dusty, and there was some toothpaste in the sink. I've done a few toilet cleans and surface wipes in those 3 weeks, and I do not think it was unhygienic in any way. I transitioned to working full-time this year and also quit smoking. This combination has made it hard for me to keep on top of things. I clean every day, but with limited time and no longer having the reward of a cigarette, I'm not deep cleaning as often as I used to. All of the deep cleans I did fortnightly are now more like every 3 to 4 weeks, and I'm vacuuming about 4 times a week instead of every day. Anyway, I'm extremely angry and resentful over what he has said, and I don't know how to move forward. I feel personally attacked, like he was accusing me of being a bad partner and a mum. He did say we need to do better, but the reality is anything he does is considered helping, while it's all considered my responsibility. How do I process what he said and move past it?
So it's not his kids, right? I'm assuming he's moved in.
It sounds like they're his stepchildren. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Because he's only been in the house for 2.5 years.
Yeah. And they've got 3 kids.
Yeah.
This one gets me kind of frustrated. All right. So for this, I obviously think it needs to come back to the conversation. So if I came at you, I know that this wouldn't be the end of the conversation, right? If I came at you and said, I'm sick of this, that would not end there. You'd be like, no, this is not okay. It's okay if you're frustrated over the mess, but it's not okay that you're bringing it back to me.
Yeah.
And one thing that we would talk about is, okay, well, what does this look like for us to make the change? So if he says us, that's good, but where's the action to back that up? So, straight off the bat, it would be put a roster in place, like if you need to. And we've done that before that we hold on to very loosely and we haven't touched again since.
Definitely lasted.
But we struggle to keep on top of the mess with the 4 kids. But when we do put a roster in place, we kick butt, we clean the place together. We actually make it fun. We put music on as a dance party, everything else. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think either of us would just take it. If that was the way that was communicated to us, we would bring it back. Like, all right, that's fine that you struggle with that. First of all, don't talk to me like that. But 2, what are we going to do about that? Yeah.
I think the fact that he said we, I would kind of call him on it.
Yeah.
Or like turn it around, not to be manipulative, but be like, what would you like to do with this? Like ask him, okay, what would be the standard that you would like to step up to, kind of thing. He might have not meant, he might have done it in that like backwards way of saying it really needs to be her, but he said we, so I would hold him to that.
Yeah.
There's so many things that come into this, and this is the perfect mental load example, because she is feeling like she can't express everything she does. And he's got a moment of frustration at the house, which even reading her story, I was like, oh my gosh, she deep cleans every 3 to 4 weeks.
Good job.
Cool. Yeah. She's doing very well, if this is legit. And I definitely have times where I'm like, this house is so messy. But I just can't genuinely think of an instance where I look at the house being a mess and I think, this house is so messy, and my anger is directed at you, because it's not. you. And especially when you have kids, it's your children. It is a really tough dynamic when it is a step parent because I can imagine that there would be really difficult tensions that go on where you would feel an element of responsibility over your children individually, even though that parent hopefully is very much embracing the role. And maybe some of these kids are his, who knows. I think you would feel a sense of responsibility individually about your children and maybe even defensiveness. So I think that definitely muddies the conversation and could make it a little bit more complicated in terms of figuring out where each person's coming from, because it would be very dynamic, very complex. And when you have entered into a space with children that hasn't been, like when we had kids, we had them together. And so we both started at the same point and we've both kind of grown through that process. So we've kind of slowly been introduced to the things that need to happen as a family. When you enter into a family that has children already, you're jumping into them at a certain level. And so catching up mentally with that is really complicated, I'm sure. I can imagine. So that is like one factor that I think could be adding tension there. But I think it's a really important conversation to have. And it comes back down to that mental load thing. He may not really see the dynamics at play for you. He might not see what's happening every day, those little things that you are doing. So I think I would sit you down and say, I understand that you're stressed about the house. I feel you. Like, I don't like the house being in this state either. I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed though, because this is what I'm having to do. This, and this. One thing I think is really important to point out, which we've highlighted a lot through our marriage, is what she says at the end here, where it's her responsibility and he's helping. I think that is a really important clarification point.
Yep.
It is not her responsibility and he's helping. They need to do it. It's their responsibility.
Yep.
And it's the same with parenting. You're not babysitting your kids. You are just their dad.
Yeah.
So when you take them when I'm out, it's not because you're doing me a favor. It's because you are their father.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an important thing to explore together.
Yeah.
And making sure that you're both, because you can really subconsciously take on those things.
Oh, absolutely. And especially in that step family environment, you know, I could easily see him coming into that space. Again, we're speculating here, but I could easily see him coming into that space to be like, these are your kids. You need to clean up after your kids. But honestly, mate, like if you're going into a family, go into that family, like become part of that family. Yeah. And I know that's going to be a lot easier said than done, but especially in something like this, you know, like it's you need to connect in there.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because he would have entered into a space as a helper.
Yeah.
So he would have, the times when he started to clean the first instances, it would have been categorized as him helping her.
Yeah. And that's still something really important to point out, because it's like that transition hasn't happened. And that transition, you know, I think sometimes we expect that transition will just happen. Yeah. In many different ways, right? And we think transitions will just happen
naturally.
And naturally. But again, experience tells us they don't, unless we can clearly communicate what the problem is, but also be a part of that together, work through that together. It's not smooth. It's just like this jarring thing. Then you have arguments because you've got expectations, you've got assumptions, you've got all these sorts of things that come into the mix. And then it's just, just messy. Yeah, absolutely. I think conversation could really help this. I think there are lots of dynamics at play specifically for this situation, but this is a common issue regardless of your family structure, a common issue. And the things that you point, I'm glad that this person has stepped through the things that she thinks is like impacting why she's so frustrated by it, because that's really helpful. That's really good conversation points. Yeah. And as we've said before, if she comes into the conversation and says, you this, and this, it's actually going to shut him down. Yeah, he'll put his barriers up.
Yeah. If instead you can come to the conversation and be like, hey, I just wanted to say, I was really wrestling with how you brought that up the other day. I felt very much like you were upset at me. I was wondering why it like threw me so much. So I think these are the reasons. I struggle with this. I struggle with this. These are things I've thought about, and have that be like, you're entering into the conversation with an attitude of curiosity, which I've said a lot now. And I'm probably going to keep saying, you're not coming to attack him. You're not coming to correct him. You're coming to become closer as a team. And so you're coming to the conversation with curiosity at yourself, curiosity about why you're feeling the way you're feeling, curiosity about why he's reacting the way he's reacting, and curiosity about how you guys can be a better team going forward. Catchphrase of Honey, We Need to Chat. think about 5 years from now, where do you want to be? What team dynamic do you want to have? If you're happy for this to continue to be a wedge that slowly gets more and more reinforced, all right, probably not worth bringing it up. You're happy with that. If you're not happy, if you want to be a more cohesive team that's working together, that owns the stuff together, especially if you are in that kind of step relationship, like forming a new family, this is really important because you need to be directional with how you're going. And those conversations can be incredibly important.
And incredibly hard. They can be
really
hard,
difficult.
you know, again, because we've just had this conversation through one of the chat jars. They're not easy conversations, but they're so important to have. And they're intentional, you know. It was a lot of that, understanding where you're coming from, where I'm coming from. It's exactly the same here. And I think, again, we didn't solve it in that conversation. You know what I mean? This is something that we're going to be going on like for a while now. And I think that's another big thing to bring up. You know, you just pointed out, picture what your relationship is in, you want it to be like in 5 years. I know for me, sometimes I'm like, I don't want to wait 5 years, mate. Like I want it now, but things take a while. And if you're invested in your relationship, investments aren't always fast. And this is one that is okay for them to go for a while. You know, I don't know of any of our situations that we've had to work through that have been fast, but I know for a fact every one that we have worked through has made our relationship stronger.
Well, you don't see results quickly.
No.
Like long-lasting results in almost any area of life is not achieved quickly.
No.
So
enough said.
Yeah, enough said. But you're not alone. That's a common conversation.
Yeah, this is triggering for a lot of people.
I think also it's important to say what you've kind of just said on this podcast. It might look like conversations are fun and easy and light, and they should just go smoothly, and we should just be willing to hear the other person all the time. That's not always the case for us. I wish we could just make it like super raw. You saw all of the difficult stuff. It wouldn't necessarily be helpful. It'd probably just be more like reality TV.
Yeah. We're not about that.
No, we're not about that. But just to be really clear, these things aren't neat and easy.
No.
If they were, there would be no point of having a podcast like this. Anyway, moving right along.
Yeah. Did someone write that one in?
No, that was r/relationships.
Yeah.
But now we're going to move on to a listener write-in.
What? Wow.
So, anonymous listener write-in. Thank you. Let's dive right in.
Let's do it.
Me, 26 female, and my partner, 30 male, have been together for 6 years. We'll use Pete as a pseudonym for my partner. Throughout our relationship, Pete has been a wonderful partner. We have not had any major conflicts and have been able to work through anything together, and we are a very united couple. The only issue within our relationship that we haven't been able to work through has been Pete's mother. The entire time we have been together, my experience has been that I've been bullied by her. Pete shuts down during conflict and says that he doesn't want to get involved whenever things are at their worst. We lose contact with him for a few months and then things are just back to normal and never resolved. Pete doesn't want to lose his relationship with his parents, which I understand, but I feel like I've been forever fighting my own battle with his parents alone. We have just recently had a baby together, and I have had more criticism by them, which left Pete angry, although he didn't want to get involved, quotation marks. I'm feeling very alone within this battle. I want to feel like a priority to Pete, though when I bring up this, he feels as if I'm making him choose between his family and myself. This is a really tough one.
That is a tough one. Can we give a name for the person that wrote in?
Let's call her Laura.
Laura.
It's not Laura, but let's just call her Laura.
Okay. It's not unique to Laura, this situation. I think we've touched base on something similar to this in one of our previous episodes with a mother-in-law. And it wasn't about the bullying stuff, but just about how, the partner whose mum it is just wasn't really helping the situation. And I think that's definitely something. Okay, so we've had situations with both of our parents where we've had to navigate through, right?
Yeah, and everybody will have that.
Exactly. Yeah. And full respect for our parents. There's been times where you've had to say something to your parents, or you've had to have that conversation. I've had to talk to my parents and I had the conversation, but there's also times where I've had to have the conversation with your parents, vice versa, and we've had to do it together. Yeah. Right. There's been the different levels. Yeah. Right. I think definitely, I think it's worth Pete talking to his mum about it. Again, like, and this is the hard thing, man, when you bring your own parents involved with this, and Mum, I know you listen, and we're very on the same page of this. We've had this conversation before, but it's very hard because there's so many more triggers and everything involved in those conversations when it's to do with your parents. And because there's so much familiarity, it's so much easier to have a heated conversation with your parents, right? Because you know them for so much longer. And I don't know, it's just so much easier to get cranky at parents than anyone else, I guess. I think that he needs to have that conversation with his mum in the softest way possible. This is the ideal situation, and this would be so hard, but I believe that we would do this too. Let's just pretend I'm just talking to you, right? And with our relationship. Okay, so remove the mum-son side of stuff. Yeah. How would I want to talk to you about this sort of a thing?
Yeah.
And I think it would be, again, it's creating that safe space. But again, like if he comes at it heated, like every conversation we've talked about, her walls is going to go up, and like the conversation's going to go nowhere. It won't go anywhere. But he needs to create that safe space. And picture 5 years from now, and do this with Pete, Laura. Like from 5 years from now, what do you both want this relationship to look like with his mum? And picture that. And then work back from there. Okay, cool. That's what we want. And even voice that with her. As awkward and as cheesy as that can be, exactly what I would be doing with you, because that's a lot of what we're talking about in this podcast. Like, yeah, we talk about couples majority of the time, but it goes beyond just the couple, the things that we're talking about.
I think this sounds like a complicated one, though, because it sounds to me like Pete has a bit of an attachment style issue going on with his parents, which I resonate a lot with. So it sounds to me like he knows that this happens, but he does not know how to communicate with his parents about this. And so it doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like the same dynamic as if this was us playing this out.
No,
I think what would be more similar is if we flipped it. And if you were feeling bullied by my dad, for example, back, let's say when we first got together, because obviously there's been a lot of work in between, me confronting my parents and navigating that dynamic was a lot more complicated in some ways because of just attachment that was happening. And if there's any kind of anxiety or any kind of like communication style that's happened in the past that's meant that you just don't know how to interact with them in a neutral and healthy and constructive way. And so it sounds to me from this, it's a short story, but it sounds to me like he shuts down. Well, she says he shuts down during conflict and he doesn't want to get involved. That doesn't sound like someone who's just like, oh, I'm super neutral, I couldn't care less. It actually sounds like someone who's really wrestling with a lot of stuff that's impacting how he talks to his parents and how he engages with conflict. And so I totally agree with you about sitting down together. So Laura and Pete sitting down together. And I think it's really valid for you, Laura, to say to him, I actually can't just keep going in this dynamic with your mom in this way. Like that's not a journey that can keep going this way. It's not healthy. It doesn't end well. We've got a child now. And it's just ramped up. So I think it's a very valid conversation to have. It might not be a fun one, like we've said before, but really valid. So I think sitting Pete down and saying, hey, I know he's been recently angry about some of the criticism. So he's seen it. He's aware of it. He doesn't want to get involved, but he's aware of it. So sitting him down and saying something like, I know you've seen it. I know you don't know how to get involved. I know you don't want to get involved, but I need to tell you this is extremely important to me and I can't keep going this way. And so we do need to figure out what we're going to do about it. And then doing that. Where do we want to be in 5 years' time as your own core family unit? Because really you do, as you become a unit, you do remove from your parents and you don't, hopefully it doesn't have to be no relationship with them, but it does change and it needs to change. That transition is really tough for people. For some, it's tougher than it is for others. And so I think sitting down and saying, we've got a child now. In 5 years' time, where do we want to be as our unit? Where do we want to be with your mom? It's no longer, and we've had this conversation with our parents as well, it's no longer how we interact with them and who they are to us. It's actually also we're fostering who they're going to be to our kids.
Yeah.
And parents are just like us. They're just humans with things that they've experienced and have made them into who they are as well. And so they can work out of those traumas. They can work out of those experiences in a constructive or in a deconstructive way, in a toxic way. And they can find themselves stuck in ruts as well. But a lot of parents actually would love to be really beautiful blessings to their kids, really beautiful blessings to their grandkid. And so I think it's really important for you as a family to get very clear on, in 5 years' time, where do we want to be with this? In 5 years' time, where do we want our kids' relationship to be with with this grandma? and if you sit down and you make that clear, it helps you figure out what steps you need to take to get to that place. If nothing is communicated, nothing will get better.
Yeah. I like your answer better.
I think the other really important thing to highlight is she calls it bullying.
Yeah.
And so there are absolutely times where it's just not healthy to be around a certain person. And so I think that's, again, in that conversation you have with Pete, it's really important for you to define what the interactions are. Obviously, we don't know what these interactions are, but define what it is that makes it feel like bullying, what it is, how it impacts you, and figure out a way, if there's boundaries you can put in place, which may and probably will be not taken well. That's never fun to have boundaries put in place, but they are really important. And I really believe that boundaries in the long run benefit everybody.
Yeah.
So whether your mother-in-law is happy about the boundaries or not is a different conversation, but it's really not the deciding factor. But I do think in the long run, if it helps make the relationship smoother, it's really important. So in terms of what conversation or what steps to take, I think it's really important to be clear with what you've experienced and with Pete and say, this behavior is unacceptable. It's not just being with her that's unacceptable. It's not just this random vague thing. This is what she's been doing that's hurting me, and that's unacceptable. So we need to actually put a safe boundary in place in that regard. So when you're having this conversation, you're like, okay, where do we want to be in 5 years' time as our own insular little family? Where do we want to be? And part of that is going to include figuring out what you're okay with and what you're not. And we've had to put boundaries in place in every area of life. Like, we've had to put boundaries in place because there are some patterns that just are not healthy. And it means that if they go unaddressed, they're just going to lead us further and further apart. And so this is really important that if there's something that whatever is going on for her that makes her bully you, which is a weird behavior for an adult, there's obviously something there. So either, she's got mental health stuff going on, either there's some kind of dynamic tension, defensiveness, whatever's happening for her, that's not a healthy behavior. And there does need to be a boundary around that. And it actually will help in the long run, at least your insular family, if not the whole extended family. Yeah. To put that in place.
And Pete, I don't know if you listen to this podcast. I hope you do, because I hope you guys can listen to this together. This is going to take a lot of breathing from you, pretty much. Just to hear and to receive what Laura is feeling is going to be really challenging. And it is. You guys, this could be a real tense conversation for you. What I would love to encourage you guys to do is just commit to the journey of trying to work this out. I know you won't work it out in one conversation. And when things do start to get heated, just pause and say, let's come back to this. Take deep breaths, go for a walk, do all those things that can help you calm down. Because if you're not already in a good spot with communication, hopefully this is the start of such a strong strength for you guys to develop a strength of communication. So, I would love to just encourage you guys to commit to the journey, commit to listening and hearing each other and pausing when need to, and just take that breath, move on, come back to another point, but just commit that you will come back at another point and keep going forward with it.
And really exciting to see that it sounds like you guys have a pretty united relationship apart from this issue. So that's awesome. That's a huge foundation.
Yeah. And how great for you to model that for your kid.
100%. That's the biggest influence for us, is what we're modeling to our kids. And there's a lot of stuff we bring from our own childhood, but that doesn't mean we have to just carry that on. I think we can be really intentional what we want to carry on. And if there is some kind of anxious relationship attachment style thing going on, breaking that for the sake of your children is really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Working on it, breaking it, being intentional. Cool.
It's good.
All right.
Thank you so much for writing in. That's awesome. That's the first write-in. Hey!
Hey guys, just wanted to pop in and take a sec to talk about the extra content you can find over on our Patreon and our Spotify subscription. We have a fun little community growing over there with extra episodes, extra stories. We're also going to have resources, messages back and forth, and also submitting listener stories through that portal as well. So
also outro themes.
There's lots to be gained. Yeah. If you want to be a part of our closer knit community here at Honey We Need a Chat, please hop on over to Patreon or Spotify subscriptions and join us there. We would love to see you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. And on to another one. This is actually not a written in story. This is actually a shared reel.
Yeah.
But listeners, very, very loyal and faithful and helpful listeners, sent us a reel following our episode about mental load.
Yep.
Really interesting reel. And I'm just going to quickly describe it. I've actually seen hundreds of them in the same exact vein. So it's not unique.
I'm glad you're going to explain it because I'm like, how am I going to explain this?
Yeah. No, I will explain it. Good. Basically, it's a reel and it's from the point of view of the man and it's comedic. It's lighthearted. And he said, I think it was like POV, you have a wife or something like that. And it's her.
What's POV mean? I'm a senior citizen these days. I'm not in with the lingo.
What did you just say before that you're so old with technology? Oh,
I was trying to take a video of Bonnie and I ended up just taking 2 photos.
The post that he just made about Bonnie. I heard him from the bathroom talking and I was like, oh, he's making a video. And then I heard him do it again. So I thought he was just reading. But no, he had just taken 2 photos instead. Anyway, POV means point of view.
Got it.
Yeah. And it's used on social media as like this is the point of view to come to the video with. So you think about that perspective. Okay. Yeah. So funny.
Seriously, I just see stuff. I'm like, Pov, I have a wife.
Pov,
what does that mean?
Oh my gosh. Well, Pov, I've got a wife. And it's from the Pov of the husband. Basically, it starts with he's like watching TV or something. And then she's like, hey, and he looks over at her and she's like, can you please take out the bins? No worries, give me 5 minutes. Turns back to the TV. And then he like turns back quickly to her and she's taking the rubbish out. She's like, it's fine, I'll do it. And then she said, can you vacuum? And he goes to plug in the vacuum and then he turns back. By the time he's plugged in the vacuum, she's doing it. She's like, it's fine, I'll do it. And then she asks for a drink and he goes to get one out of the fridge and then he brings it back to her and she's already gotten herself one. It's funny.
Yeah.
But it's common.
Yeah.
And it was sent in by listeners as like what do you think of this type thing? Is that right?
Yeah. I think it was a bit of a joke.
A bit of a joke.
Sending. Yeah.
Because we've just been talking about mental load. But it was interesting because straight away we had a quick chat about it and there's so much that sits into that reel.
Yeah.
So much. And from a really brief look, it's a funny video. It's like, oh yeah, this is definitely a dynamic that has played out with us.
Yeah.
Sometimes, not too much, but there have been things. And usually like she had a bit of an attitude while she was doing her stuff. So you could tell she's like, it's fine, I'll do it. Usually if I do something like this, I just actually can't be bothered waiting. So I'll just do it. It's not normally an attitude thing, but I think there would be so many reasons from a wife's perspective that you might just give up waiting for them to do something, even if it's only for 5 minutes. And the first one that comes to mind is how often are you having to ask him to do this stuff?
Yeah.
And why are you having to ask him to do this stuff?
It's asking in the first place, I think, that gets me. And again, like I know this was sent in as a joke, so please don't get all up in arms.
It was funny and we did laugh.
It was a funny meme, but in the back of my head as well, because just seeing so many write-ins, comments, all this sort of stuff that is revolved around this.
Yeah.
I can't just have it as a joke anymore because it's just so in our world now as topics. And I think in the first place, straight away, I'm like, well, why is she asking? Like, why would you even have to ask him to take out the rubbish?
There's a difference between I'm doing something right now and there's something helpful you could do. So bins, let's use bins as an example. I might be cleaning the kitchen and the bin is full and I know it needs to go out. And if I say to you, hey, can you take the bin out? That's because at that point I'm cleaning the kitchen. It would be really helpful for the bin to be cleaned as well. It's not something that you should have just known I needed you to do that.
Yeah.
It's something I'm saying neutrally, oh, can you do that for me because I'm doing the kitchen?
Yeah.
If you said, just give me 5 minutes, fine. If you said, give me 5 minutes and then you didn't do it, that's a bit annoying.
Yeah.
Then I'm having to be your mom a little bit and be like, hey, can you take it? I probably would have just done it.
Yeah.
To be honest, by the time it got to me realizing you hadn't. But there have been times where the bin is overflowing and I have said, can you do bins? And then it hasn't been done. That's more of like I shouldn't have had to have asked you to do bins. And I need to be really clear. We are equals in cleaning. Like I'm not like the one that does all the cleaning and you don't do it. This is not a normal thing, just to give Blair some.
I'm like, oh, I'm going to look bad at this.
No. This is not a normal thing. But if I had asked you to do it and you still didn't do it, and you should have actually noticed that the bin was full and just done it yourself because you're a part of the family, that's exhausting. And again, with the mental load, like that's one tiny thing. Then you think about all the other things that this person might have on their head that they're then having to navigate. And so, yes, it might be kind of funny, but it's actually not that funny when it's also the bin, the bathroom, the toilet paper, the groceries, the kids stuff. That's not very funny. It's actually just really exhausting.
Yeah.
I think the other thing as well is looking at the patterns in the family. So if you are sitting on the couch watching TV or scrolling on your phone and I've been cleaning for an hour and I ask you to do something, I might be a little frustrated.
Yeah.
Like, and not that that's necessarily fair, because just because I choose to clean at that point doesn't mean you need to.
Yeah.
But if that's a regular rhythm in the family where one person is doing all this stuff and you're just watching TV because you want to, after a while, again, that's exhausting.
Yeah.
That's a really out of balance thing. So I think looking at the rhythm, the natural rhythms that happen in your family and being like, is this something I actually normally do while she's cleaning? That's important. That's maybe why she's frustrated.
Yeah. And I hear as a joke a lot too, like, oh, I just need to get the dishes done before I get in trouble, like from a lot of guys. And it's funny, like I genuinely laugh every time, but I'm like, at the same time, just do the dishes, man.
Why do you think, because you guys are capable, like you are such a capable person.
Yeah.
It honestly baffles me a little bit because for one thing, there's roles within a family. And so you'll fall into natural roles. Some will be kind of really traditional. Some will be a bit more like equal, whatever you want to call it. But someone might be working full time. Someone might be home with the kids. So I can understand why tasks would fall under that. What I can't understand is the household care all falling to one person. Or the response, like this person before was saying, it being that person's responsibility and the other person as a helper. I just don't understand that dynamic.
Yeah, no. And I think it's down to the conversation too, right? Because I don't think we ever really struggled with that. I'm trying to think back.
Well, you were living out of home before we got together.
Yeah. So I've been out of home since I was 16. So I'm used to looking after myself and whatever else.
I think there are blind spots for people. And unfortunately, they can go unaddressed.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad thing that there is a blind spot in the initial part.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad thing that one partner has to identify a blind spot to their partner and say, hey, this is tough. Can you help me with this? I don't think that's a bad thing. It's going to happen from both sides all the time. I think it is really disappointing when that has been identified and it is either faced with criticism or complaint, whininess, like from an adult. Come on. Or it's just ignored. It's not addressed. It's
or
not
you're made to feel stupid.
Yeah.
Like, oh, something now. You got to know about that. Yeah.
It's a very strange thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's fair. So I think addressing issues that are an issue is a teamwork thing. Like we've spoken about many times on the podcast, if you have a problem, you need to be able to communicate that to your partner.
Yeah.
That needs to be the first step. It's your responsibility till that's communicated. Once that's communicated, it needs to become the collective responsibility. Yeah. And that partner needs to buy into that.
Yeah.
Because if you're a team that's working to be a unified couple, a unified family, it's not going to be constructive to have those things landing on one person.
Yeah. I don't know why it is a lot of guys struggle with this sort of stuff. I don't have the answer, but if someone was struggling with that, how would you approach it?
I would have a conversation about mental load. I'd say, I know it's not in your face. It's not clear. It's not obvious that I'm carrying a lot, but there's a lot of things that I'm carrying and I'm really struggling. So I need to talk about this.
Yeah.
I would use the TikToks and reels that we've made as excuses and say, hey, I found this podcast talking about this thing. Look at this video. That's a new concept.
What about that one?
And I would be like, this is something I've never really thought about. I haven't had words for it, but this is something that I struggle with.
Yeah.
And because I've got all these little pieces floating around that I have to keep balancing, I need a little bit of help.
And I think that what would be bad is if you then push that on the guy. I think they would shut down. From what I've observed, if something's dumped on a guy, majority of the time the guy will shut down and they'll get overwhelmed. So a lot of things that guys operate like responses is out of insecurities. But I think we go silent, we go inwards, we shut down, and it's like we don't care. I don't think that's true. I think it's actually more down to insecurities and overwhelmness or whatever else, because we haven't been brought up how to deal with emotions, deal with stress. We don't get taught. We get told to suck it up and push through it. So when something is brought to us, I think we shut down. I think that's just our natural response. I don't think there's going to be a guy that's happy with letting their partner just go around the house and doing everything for them and being the mum of the house. I don't think guys are. I don't know, but if that's you, suck it up, mate. You got to do something about it. But I don't think most guys would be happy with that do struggle with that. we've spoken a few times about how when you're exhausted or you don't know how to do something and you shut down, like you've spoken, you did the dishes today for the first time in 3 days, right? Because I didn't help, just to be clear. So I was struggling too to keep on top with all the mess. And you were saying about how you were so tired and you kind of just shut down. And you kind of become incapable of doing things.
Yeah.
Like people do become incapable of doing things. I think that's actually more common for guys because we don't work through stuff. I see this a lot with dads with work. We shut down. Dad, like a lot of dads disconnect. They retreat. They'll move away. They'll leave. You know what I mean? Because it's a fight or flight response because they just don't know how to communicate. Yeah. They don't know how to process what they're feeling.
I don't think the upbringing is on the side of the man in terms of teaching them. I mean, I'm talking about the collective upbringing, generally speaking, in terms of teaching them how to naturally fall into these places.
No.
But hearing you say that sounds exhausting from a woman's perspective.
Absolutely.
Hearing that and being like, okay, so now not only do I have, no, that's not how I'm feeling, just to clarify, but not only do I have to do all this stuff, I also then have to like pussyfoot around my husband when I talk about it, so that he doesn't feel overwhelmed, kind of thing. I can imagine that being a reaction like, yeah, okay, you get overwhelmed, but I'm doing everything. So like, so now I have to take on board your overwhelm in navigating it as well. And I can imagine that would be exhausting. So I think it's 100%, as we've talked about before, when you come to an issue, it's really important to know who you're addressing. It's really important to know what the goal of the conversation is.
Yeah.
So if your goal is to be constructive, your goal is to be a team at the end, and you know that your husband or your partner is not something that he's natural at or they're natural at. I want to make it more general than just men and women too, because I know this wouldn't always fall into this category. You need to think about how you want the conversation to go and address it in a way that's going to be constructive.
Yeah.
It is exhausting.
Yeah.
That is not easy.
No. And again, I'm probably more speaking to the guys that listen to this episode more than the women, is helping us to understand why do we shut down? You know what I mean? Why do we respond that way? Yeah. And I think there's still a responsibility for the couple to ask that question as well.
Oh, 100%. So it's not, to ask the question.
Yeah. So it's not, so it was me. It's good for you to know that that's how I respond by shutting down. Doesn't mean now you don't talk to me about stuff, but it is going to navigate the conversation that we have and the way that we have it.
Yeah.
Right.
We address it.
And that was probably more my point is if you just come to me and say, you're not doing enough around the house, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're doing this, you're doing that, I'm going to shut down. And that's not okay. I'm not excusing that reaction, but I'm saying that is a reaction that a lot of guys will have. So what I'm trying to encourage is bring that into the conversation, the way they might react. I feel like a lot of the things that we talk about, again, we hear about how, my husband would never talk like that. I could never have this conversation with my partner and so forth. I genuinely think because guys don't know how to, and that's so important to bring into this conversation because we're trying to build a community that is intentional about working on communication. Guys, we really need to understand and be reflective of ourselves. Why do we respond that way? Why do we shut down? Why do we not clean? That's a question we have to be asking ourselves, but don't let it overwhelm us. Just be, again, what we said before.
Curious.
Yeah, just what we said before with Laura, like commit to the growth, like just be curious, be aware, unpack that. And ladies, like I just want to encourage you, create that safe space for your partner to explore that. I don't want to excuse any behavior, but just create the safe space, be intentional. Again, I just see it so many times with guys. I'm working a lot with dads, and it's just a big thing that we just struggle with. How do we do that? How do we work through that? How do we grow?
I think it's really important in your relationship to be having conversations about how each of you work.
Yeah.
Why each of you work the ways that you work, learning about each other, having that attitude of curiosity so that when you do come to issues like this, it's not a matter of not only are we not navigating the problem, we're also now having to navigate who you are and learn who you are.
Yeah.
The trap that I hear in that is if a man is like, we shut down when we're faced with these things, and that's the extent of it. And I love what you've just said. I love what you've just said. It's like the onus is on that man to understand themselves. But if you've had to bring the same thing up 3 or 4 or 5 times, coming at it really gently is obviously not being effective. As in, sometimes you do have to be a bit more like, I need this from you. I've brought this up. What's happening? What's happening for you?
But I would also say, yes, it would be tiring, but it's not. Like I could easily see that as a response of why would I bother bringing this up with him? It's too tiring.
Yeah, and falling into bitterness.
Exactly, and that's the other side of the trap. And I think what we've been saying in this episode especially is that it is hard. It is a commitment and it is tiring, you know, especially early days. I had to really learn how to talk with you because I'm blunt, right?
Yeah.
And I would hurt you. It was so exhausting and tiring, and to be like, think of every word that came out of my mouth. It was so hard then, and it still is now. Like, I mean, we were still working on the way that I communicate and stuff, but it's worth that.
It's a good struggle.
It's a good struggle to have. So I think that's the other point I'm trying to make.
And if I had been in that situation when we were learning that stuff, if I'd just been like, yeah, well, I just get mad when you talk to me like that. I get mad. I shut down.
Oh, yeah. It's never an excuse.
Oh, no. I'm not saying that's what you're saying. I'm just like following that example through. If I was like, yeah, that's how I am. I get triggered when you talk like that. And I never took time to be like, why do I get so triggered?
Yeah.
Instead of you just being like, okay, I know she's triggered when I talk like this. I know she's triggered when I talk this. So I'm going to just like dodge those things, or I'm not going to bring up anything in that category. It's a conversation of like us figuring that out, me being curious about myself, being like, why am I so triggered? So then I can be like, I think I'm triggered because I feel like when you say stuff like that, you're criticizing me. Or I feel like because of this experience, this makes me think this kind of thing. It needs to be a constant conversation.
Yeah.
It needs to be constant curiosity about yourself first, and about your partnership, the dynamics together second.
Yeah.
And then how you can work through that as well. Because you can fall into one partner's carrying the load of figuring that out, but they're also not getting the buy-in of the other partner. So if you had been carrying that load of figuring out how to communicate to me, but I hadn't been exploring that for myself as well, you would not be you'd be in a bitter place. You'd be in a place where you're avoiding all the things that trigger me because you know they trigger, but you've got no conversation.
Yeah.
The heart of all of this is both partners need to input into their marriage.
Absolutely.
Into their partnership.
Yeah.
They have to input. Like you can't have one partner being like, we should work on this. We should work on this for the rest of your life. That's just not going to work. It's not going to work because either you stay together and you're just in really bitter separate places, or you don't stay together. Things fall apart. It doesn't work. It does not work that way. And so at the core of it, these conversations are important because we're figuring out how we can be a team in this.
And that's like seriously my heart behind this podcast. Man, I really want guys to step up. Like I really, really do. I really want guys to be invested, passionate about growing as men, but also as partners, you know, like and investing in what it means to be in a relationship. I was thinking about this recently. There's a lot of stuff coming out at the moment about how bringing masculinity back, right? I see it around. And what it is pretty much like, oh, I'm teaching my boys how to fix a car. I'm teaching them how to fish and camp and all that sort of stuff. I'm like, all right, cool. I want to teach my kids that sort of stuff as well. But for me, I'm like, all right, well, the part that you're missing is, okay, cool, fix a car, make a meal, go fishing, love your wife. Like, where's those lessons coming in for masculinity? Why does masculinity have to be the rough and tumble stuff? Why can't it be how to look after your household, how to look after your partner? I want this for my boys, and I know that I can't teach my boys this without you. I need their mum to help me to teach our boys how to treat their future partners, and for our daughter to not settle for anything less than what we can model for her and teach her. Do you know what I mean? Like, but I can't do that on my own. We have to do that together. And I don't know what the stat is. It's around like 50% of marriages end in divorce, right? And if we can't be intentional, you know, we're not perfect at this. We are not perfect at communication. We're wanting to get better because we see the value in it. We don't want to be another one of those 50% that ended in divorce. We don't want our boys to grow up and mistreat women. We don't want our daughter to settle with whatever guy finds her interesting. We want her to find a man that's going to look after her, care for her, and partner with her in the future. And we want our boys to do the same. So we need to be on the same page in our relationship to model to our kids on what that looks like.
Yeah. And it's not because you should do this. It's because it's hard work and you should do hard work. It's not. It's because it is beautiful.
Yeah.
The harmony of working together and being unified and being a team, and it is beautiful. It is so life-giving.
Yeah.
And it's worth it. And I genuinely, when I see couples that fall into this dynamic, it makes me heartbroken because they aren't experiencing that beauty.
Yeah.
And so if it's the guy that's just not connecting and just not stepping up in that space, he's actually missing out. He's actually missing out.
Yeah.
If that is you, you're actually missing out.
Yeah.
And it's not that hard to start moving this direction. It's actually small little steps at a time. It's not a massive big task in one big go. It's a small adjustment so that in 5 years' time, you are more in that harmonious space. In 10 years' time, you are more in that harmonious space. And you can do it.
So this started by the video, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So to round it up, because we've covered a bit, the video, it was funny, right?
Yeah.
Just to be clear. But I think it just captures a lot of our heart behind what we're trying to do here. Emphasize the teamwork, emphasize the intentionality. It came from a male's perspective. I know there's a lot of great guys out there and you're doing an awesome job.
Yeah.
But I know there's a lot of guys that are struggling with this. And what I want to do is not shame you. I want to encourage you. And again, I'm not perfect at it. We're still growing. That's why we're doing this, to grow. Grow with us. Come on this journey with us. Write in, mate. Like, I want to encourage you as much as I can. For the guys that are writing in, I love it. Keep it going. Want to keep going on this journey with you. Iron sharpens iron.
Yep. All right. So last one. And then we're going to have an extra one for Patreon and Spotify subscription.
Get on to Patreon and sub.
So last one from r/relationships. Wife 29 female struggling to stay with 29 male husband due to hobby being top priority. Using a throwaway because my husband, we'll call him Randy.
Really?
Yeah. I thought it was
so funny.
So Blair calls himself Randy Ramble on Twitch and on TikTok as well. And I thought it was so funny because it sounded like I've written in the story. But I'm not 29, so can't be me.
You wish.
I wish. Using a throwaway because my husband, we'll call him Randy, is on Reddit quite a bit. We have been married for going on 4 years. We knew each other and dated briefly in high school, found our way back to each other 10 years later, and ended up getting married. Now, Randy is an avid gamer. I don't just mean enjoys the occasional video game. I mean spends 10% of his life working, 10% of his life sleeping, and the other 80% is on the game. I mean wakes up, and the first thing he does is hit the power button. The moment he comes home from work, he hits the power button. Every literally waking second, he is stationed in front of that computer. Video games just aren't my thing, never have been. I'm not good at them, and it's never really intrigued me. I knew about his love for games when we met, and I guess part of me just assumed maybe he'd cut down some of that time for me, but he hasn't. He doesn't ask me to go out. He doesn't plan anything. If he had his way, he would stay at home in front of that screen every second of every day. I honestly think it's borderline an addiction, but maybe I'm being dramatic. Either way, we're approaching year 4 of marriage, and nothing has improved. We've had multiple conversations, fights, etc. about the amount of time he spends on the game and how little effort he puts into spending time together or with me or just our marriage in general. I spent a decent chunk of money on a gaming PC because I wanted to make an attempt at gaming with him or getting into it in the off chance I could save our marriage, but I just can't. I work on a computer and spending 8 hours a day in front of a computer to get off work and move to a different one just doesn't work for me. I like to go out and experience things, movies, museums, dinners, theme parks, literally anything, but getting him to go anywhere or do anything is like pulling teeth, especially because I know he doesn't want to go or do those things. And it just makes me feel guilty for dragging him out from where he'd rather be. In previous relationships, I had to become comfortable with my own company, and in many ways I am. If I want to go out and do something, generally I'll just do it, but I feel so lonely when I have a whole husband at home. After 4 years and many talks about the issue with no changes or improvements, just sorry, and I'll try and do better, should I just admit that we aren't compatible and move on? I've tried and tried to convince myself I'm okay with being on my own, even in this marriage, but I just don't think I really am. I love this man to the end of the earth, but is it worth being by myself in practically every aspect of my life? And then she has a little edit that says, I guess I did leave out some things just to clear up. A lot of people have asked why I married him or how I love him when we have nothing in common. We actually have quite a bit in common other than the gaming. We like similar movies, music, food. We both enjoy D&D. We have a lot of similar ideologies and had similar goals during the time we dated and got engaged. We didn't just shotgun wedding at random. We used to go on vacations. We went on dates regularly. If I was leaving the house to run errands or just going shopping, he'd offer to tag along. We'd go on walks at the lake, etc. He didn't make it appear that it was a chore to be around me. Maybe I changed. Maybe I did become a chore to be around. Or maybe he really did what he felt necessary to keep me. And once he knew he had me, those things slowly became less and less frequent. I didn't marry him with the intent to change him. I wasn't upset that he enjoyed gaming. And I didn't have a problem with it because before marriage, it was more balanced.
Cool. Yeah. So I relate specifically with the name. No, I do relate. We relate to that. I've had a few addictions in my past, and gaming has definitely been one of them. And by the sounds of it, yes, I would say this guy's addicted to gaming.
Fully.
Yeah, I would say. And I would actually say, I don't know what people think of this. I believe gaming can be an addiction. So what I would say is like, cool, obviously it needs a chat, it needs a conversation, but also understanding that I know guys whose partners have left them for over gaming because of their gaming. So it's for him, like, dude, seriously, you need to think about like, well, you value more the game or your wife. But at the same time, like, man, need to put in breaks, and I think having that conversation, like, so for those whose partner is really big into gaming, is not having that time with them, have the conversation, what we've done before. All right, like, come up with boundaries. You mentioned this earlier. Boundaries are really, really important.
Yeah.
And I have to revisit those boundaries from time to time. So I still play video games. We play sometimes together. When we first got married, that was what we did. We didn't really watch TV. We just played Call of Duty. And I won every time. So it has its place. I find it relaxing. I'm a very social person and I can socialize over gaming. But I know it can get too much for me. I can get very invested in it. I can get very hooked, whatever else. Not saying that gaming is bad most of the time, but for me, it can be. So I've got to put those boundaries in place. It's been issues for us in the past, and you've been able to say to me, hey, I think it's becoming an issue. Cool. We go back to the boundaries that we've set in place.
Yeah.
If it continues to become an issue for us, like if it's something that is like, it's just not getting better, then times I've just deleted all games. Like there's a big period of time where I don't do it. It's not worth it. And so we don't do it. And I think that would be the conversation to have. Like, have a break for 6 months. If they cannot do that, if they cannot have a break from a computer game for 6 months, there's something wrong.
Yeah. And there probably would be supports for people in that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Category. I know they've got Alcoholics Anonymous. They might have something like Gamers Anonymous.
Well, I mean, you don't need to do Gamers Anonymous. It's like, go see a counselor. Yeah. It's not. You don't have to find a specific thing for a gaming person. Yeah. It's what's going on for them. I mean, for a lot of addictions, it comes from escapism, right? We're trying to get out of something. We're trying to run away from something. It's something we have to deal with, right? So it's not necessarily the addiction to the game. It's the escape from reality. So I would say, and again, if you're in Australia and you know someone that's struggling with this sort of stuff, ask if they'd be interested in going to see their GP, go on a mental health plan. If they're not, if that makes them a bit nervous, offer to go with them, and just to say, hey, let us. When you can bring in that camaraderie to the conversation, it removes a lot of the shame, because there's so much shame to addiction. There's so much shame to these sorts of things. I've lied to you many times over my struggles, right? And it's not that I obviously want to lie. I am so ashamed of myself that's more the driving to the lies. Like, I'm just so ashamed, and I'm not excusing this, by the way. Hear me on that. Like, there's no excuse for lying. But I'm so ashamed with what I've done, and it actually makes me go into more of a spiral, because then I want to escape the shame, and I go down and down and down, and I'm just in this hole and I can't get out. And I had to get professional help, and I still struggle from time to time. We have those boundaries in place. We do things about it. We've got, we're a lot more open about those struggles now, and we can do things about it. But so there's the things what you can do. I'm not sure what you can do in America. I don't know what's there, but I'm sure there'll be stuff.
Yeah. I think the first thing I would do in this situation is, again, have a conversation with curiosity and just be like, what's happening for you? Like, identify, this is a lot of gameplay.
Yeah.
Like, just to be really clear, this is what's happening. What's happening for you? Like, is it just that you enjoy it? Just kind of explore what's happening behind the scenes, because as we've mentioned, a lot of this stuff, when it does fall into the addiction category, it's not just the thing. It's actually an escapism, like you said, from a number of things that could be happening. This screams mental health issues to me. Mental health issues to me. So, like, if this was us, I would be trying to explore what's going on with your mental health, because it is not normal to spend that much time on something especially when you are in a relationship where there is like an external draw outside of that. It's not normal to spend that much time, especially if you're cutting yourself off from outside stuff. Like there's a lot of mental health things that could be impacting that. As we said with the dishes, like I just like get in a slump and I can't get on top of it until I can get out of it. And so I feel like this could be the same kind of thing, like whatever it is that's going on for this guy, he's in a slump and this is his like escapism from that. This numbs his brain. This fills his brain with, what is it? Is it oxytocin?
Oxytocin.
Yeah, it like gives him...
dopamine.
Dopamine, sorry. It gives him that rush.
Oxytocin is the healthy thing.
Yeah, so it gives him a rush. It gives him an escapism. It gives him a sense of maybe community, maybe purpose. Maybe there's something that's drawing him there that makes him feel valuable.
Yeah.
All of the above. There's 100%, I can confidently say, something sitting behind this. I don't think anybody that's in a healthy space falls into this. And I think it is really valid to have a conversation with him, especially if you're at this place where you're thinking this is like make or break at this stage. You've communicated with him about it before. I think it's really important to dig with him curiously, gently into what is sitting behind this. And I also think it's really important, and what I would be doing in this situation, to make it very clear where you're at and what this is doing, like how this is impacting you and what this is making you feel. Like if you're thinking, I'm actually close to being like, I need to call this, that's important for him to know. Sometimes people do need to know what they're about to lose in order to be like, I need to snap out of this. He might need to know that that's where you're at, that that's how you're feeling, reassuring him that you love him. And you say in your post that you have so many things that you enjoy doing with him. You love him so much. You love him to the ends of the earth, but you're so alone. Like you feel so alone. So reassuring him that you want to be with him, you love him, you enjoy that time with him, but you're at the point where you can't keep going like this is really important, so that he knows the severity of it. And like you have said, working as a team in that. So it's not just, all right, now you need to go fix this.
Yeah.
I want you to fix this or I'm gone. It's how can we work on this together?
Yeah.
I think that's a really important key.
So a big thing is like, again, go the drastic mile, right? If he's like, oh, I'll stop doing it. Say you're a drug addict, right? You're not going to keep any drugs in the house, right? You know, you just to be clear on that, you're not going to, leave drugs around the house for them to get to. They're an addict. They're struggling with this. They won't stop, right? You got to remove it all. I would say the same with the gaming consoles, right? I know people that have had to literally get rid of it, get rid of those temptations.
And I think as well, like just getting rid of the games isn't going to make it better all of a sudden. It's definitely a good step, but it's not going to make it better, because what we've found in the past is we'll move from one escapism to another.
Yeah.
And so unless you're addressing what is happening, unless you're actually intentionally digging deeper than just the surface level outworking of it, you'll probably just find the same anxieties get transferred into a different thing.
Yeah.
You latch on in a different way. And it might not be gaming, but it might be alcohol.
Well, COVID, again, we went through our three things, right? We went from eating a lot.
Yeah.
We ate a lot, then we drank a lot, then we bought a lot, then we ate a lot, and we would stop one. We're like, oh, we're going to stop doing that. And we just go straight to the other one. Yeah. We just went on those three rotations.
Yeah. And it's been genuinely difficult to break. Genuinely difficult to break. But we needed to figure out why we were doing that in order for us to even identify what was happening. Because it wasn't just like, oh, we should stop spending money.
Yeah.
It was like, if we'd done that, we would have just gone into alcohol, and we did unknowingly. But being able to identify that was a key for us to working through it. So I think there's so much that can be done. It must be really difficult. It would be really crappy. But it doesn't mean that this is dead in the water. It's not going to go anywhere. It's actually... If you can both get on board with working together on it, it can be a really beautiful opportunity.
And again, it's not to put it all on her.
Not on
he
her.
has to buy in.
Yeah. And just an encouragement for her to recognize that he's probably not just in a logical, clear space. So if she's approaching it, just come at it from a gentle, curious mindset. Yeah, well, that's that.
That's good. We've got a Patreon episode to do now.
We do. And Blair's like asleep.
I'm asleep.
Maybe this outro will wake you up.
I'm going to do a dance. All right. I did a theme, and I don't remember the name of the style of the theme. And there we have it, folks. Another episode of Honey, We Need to Chat concludes, leaving the world forever changed because clearly our words carry the weight of global transformation. Return next week as we solve all relational conundrums with the sheer power of our microphones. We're going to do it.
Wow, ChatGPT.
Hey! Until then, keep your conversations as exaggerated and theatrical as this outro. Remember, you're not discussing it on a podcast. If you're not discussing it on a podcast, is it even worth talking about?
Not at all.
Stay chatty, my friends.
I bet the theme was exaggerated and theatrical.
No. It's an S word.
Satirical?
No. I don't remember.
Sarcastic?
No.
Right.
It's up there. I'll
Sexy.
look at it.
All right. Well, that's all, guys. Bye.
Good chat. Thanks, guys.